If the Ten Commandments were in the schools, there would not be condoms in the restrooms. There wouldn't be crime in the street, for you shall not steal. There shall not be murder, you shall not commit murder.
This is John Hagee. He's a televangelist. If you haven't heard of him, he's actually really, really famous. He's been a televangelist for like decades and decades. I hadn't heard about him until fairly recently. Well, I wanted to review some of the really unhinged, crazy stuff he's said over the years, because he's said some humdingers. For example, he said Hitler existing was part of God's plan because the Jews should blah, 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 a bunch of anti-Semitic stuff here. I'll show you a little bit later. But the reason I want to talk about the guy in the first place is because he set up an opening prayer for a campaign event for a Republican presidential candidate running against Donald Trump. Now, back in 2009 I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was when McCain was running against Obama. McCain actually distanced himself from John Hagee because he was so crazy. Hagee has always supported the Republican president, but not all Republican presidents wanted his support in the first place. Well, now the Republican candidates seem to be falling all over themselves to get his support. Deeply disturbing stuff. So let's talk about what he had to say at this campaign event and some of the crazier stuff he's said over the recent years. I believe that this is the prayer that he gave at Nikki Haley's campaign event. She's running against Donald Trump currently in the 2024 Republican primaries for president.
Our Father.
Oh God, that humming is absolutely insufferable. I'm sorry, guys.
Our Father, which art in heaven, creator of heaven and earth, the mighty God who calls the stars by name, who holds the seven seas in the palms of his hand, who breathed into dust on creation's morning, and man became a living soul.
So yeah, that's Nikki Haley's campaign event. She got him up there to pray to open it. Honestly, just praying at a political rally in the first place has all kinds of disturbing, messed up, implications behind it. But to have this guy of all people there, oh my God, you don't even know yet. We haven't even covered the clips. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of the crazy stuff this guy has said. We're going to start with the least crazy and move to the absolute most crazy, okay? This is mid-May 2022. Actually, we're moving backwards in time chronologically. Check out what he had to say. This is from the intro clip about the Ten Commandments.
What would happen if America obeyed all of the Ten Commandments? Our schools would be teaching the Ten Commandments, not throwing them out the back door.
Wait, so if schools had displays of the Ten Commandments, then they would be teaching them? I mean, not necessarily, but all right, let's entertain it for a second.
There wouldn't be a critical race theory being taught.
There is no critical race theory being taught. This is completely made up, okay? This is a culture war issue that they have successfully convinced gullible suckers is happening. Critical race theory does not exist in public schools. Honestly, can they even define it? 9 times out of 10, when you talk to a Republican, they have no idea what critical race theory even is. Anything to do with race, that's what they'll usually say.
There would be no transgender sex being taught.
This is not being taught in schools. I don't even know what he's talking about.
If the Ten Commandments were in the schools, there would not be condoms in the restrooms.
Okay, now, I went to a high school, public one, and I don't remember ever seeing condom dispensers in the high school restrooms. Did you guys ever see that? Let me know in the comments if you ever saw that. If that's like common, did I just miss it or what?
There wouldn't be crime in the street, for you shall not steal. There shall not be murder, you shall not commit murder.
He thinks that if they taught the Bible in school, there would be no crime or murder. Dead serious.
There would be no abortions because I assure you, in God's opinion, abortion is murder.
You can't assure me that. You don't have a direct line to God, much as you want to convince everybody around you that you do. That's completely made up. Do you know that the Bible is actually favorable about abortion? I know I'm stopping every 3 seconds here, but I feel like I need to address the points that he's making right now because they're nonsense. Okay, there's this verse in the Bible, Numbers 5:11-31. We're not going to read the entire thing. I just want to read a little snippet here. But this is an example of God and the Bible endorsing abortion, straight up endorsing it, saying you should get it done in certain cases. And what are those cases? If you suspect your wife's cheated on you, you should get her to, or you should force her to have an abortion, really. That's how the Bible is written. Let's just read a couple verses here, shall we? The test for an unfaithful wife. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, so another man has relations with her, and this is hidden from her husband, and her impurity is undetected, since there's no witness against her, and she's not been caught in the act, and if feelings of jealousy come over her husband, and he suspects his wife and she is impure, or if he's jealous and suspects her even though she's not impure, then he's to take his wife to the priest. He must also take an offering of a tenth of, that's unrelated and unnecessary. The priest shall bring her and have her stand before the Lord. Then he shall take some holy water in a clay jar and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water. After the priest has had the woman stand before the Lord, he shall loosen her hair and place in her hands the reminder offering, the grain offering for jealousy, while he himself holds the bitter water that brings a curse. Then the priest shall put the woman under oath and say to her, if no other man has had relations with you, and you've not gone astray and become impure while married to your husband, may this bitter water that brings a curse not harm you. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you've made yourself impure by having relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest has put the woman under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. This water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries. So there you go. That is a pro-abortion message if I've ever heard one from the Bible. If your husband suspects you've cheated on him before, he's supposed to take you to the priest where the priest will perform an abortion. So tell me again, Hagee, about you assuring me that God is opposed to abortion.
Murder. There would be no abortions because I assure you, in God's opinion, abortion is murder.
Dude just hasn't read the Bible, apparently.
The Bible is forbidden to be read in public schools.
No, it isn't. Anybody is perfectly allowed to read the Bible to their heart's content. Teachers are not allowed to force students to use the Bible as class material outside of a religion or comparative religions class or whatever. That's a little bit of nuance that he looked right over.
To be read in public schools, public prayers would be forbidden. The 10 Commandments were stripped from the walls of Congress and schools and universities. The fact is that every crisis America is facing can be solved by obedience to the 10 Commandments. That's not an overreach. That's a fact. It's time for 65 million Christians in America to stand up and fight back and be counted. Vote the Bible. Vote the Bible. Vote the Bible.
See, this is a clever little way that televangelists have found to sidestep the Johnson Amendment, which makes it against the law for nonprofit organizations to specifically endorse political campaigns or candidates or parties. They're not supposed to come out and say, I don't want you to vote for the candidate that this or that or whatever. I want you to vote for Donald Trump. I want you to vote for Nikki Haley or whoever else. They're not supposed to do that. And if they do, they're supposed to lose tax-exempt status. Unfortunately, the IRS has not been prosecuting those cases. They don't even care, seemingly. But this is the little sidestep they came up with before the IRS stopped giving a shit. They will talk about these political issues, and they'll say, vote the Bible. Vote for the candidate that supports these political issues. And they'll list all the political issues that Trump holds or that Nikki Haley holds or whoever other person, Ron DeSantis or whatever.
Vote the Bible. Vote the Bible. Bring righteousness back to America. Let freedom ring. Can I get a witness? It's time for 65 million people to take our Bible-based convictions and drive this godless socialist administration out of office.
There is no godless socialist administration, unfortunately. That sounds amazing, honestly. But yeah, we've never, to my knowledge, ever had a socialist or a godless president in office. Honestly, I don't think Trump believes in God, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think Trump uses religious people to his advantage, and that's about as far as it goes. So in my opinion, I think Trump is as close as we've ever come to having an atheist president. God, look at how big his church is. This is a lot of people, dude. Tens of thousands of people there every Sunday.
Do it now. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Give the Lord praise in this house.
So yeah, that's John Hagee. And that's a recent one, too. That's from 2022. Check this one out, 2015. We're just going back in time, baby, and it gets crazier and crazier as we go. He still holds all these views. He has not retracted anything, and he still repeats this kind of crazy stuff to this day. Check this one out, late June 2015.
The Supreme Court in Washington has handed down its decision in a 5-4 ruling.
Right, this was right after gay marriage was legalized, and can you guess what he had to say about it?
Supporting same-sex marriage. But the Supreme Court in heaven has handed down its unanimous decision in a 3-0 ruling from God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, recorded in the book of Genesis chapter 2:24, stating, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh."
Okay, interesting. What about all of the other verses that talk about group marriages? What about all of the famous patriarchs in the Bible that were married to like 16 different women? Is that one okay? That's not one man, one woman as far as I can tell, right? That's one man and one woman and one woman and one woman. But he's completely ignoring that nuance. You know why? Because he wants to discriminate against people that he doesn't like. Plain and simple.
Marriage is exclusively between a man and a woman.
No, sorry, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't say that in the Bible either.
Same-sex marriage will never be accepted in heaven as legitimate, so says God Almighty. This Supreme Court has made America the new Sodom and Gomorrah. God will have to judge America, or he's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Wow, okay. Well, that's really interesting to me because he obviously has not read the Bible at all. Earlier, he obviously hadn't read the Bible about abortion rights. God very clearly was in favor of abortion, right? And in this case, he hasn't read the Bible where it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah and the reason that they fell. Ezekiel 16:49 and 50 says, "Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen." Doesn't say anything about gay people. Matter of fact, he was planning on destroying Sodom and Gomorrah before any mention of like gay stuff that happened in the city. The reason Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed was because of their ill treatment of the poor, not because they had gay people in it. These preachers just make up pretexts for why they hate these people. They pick out who they don't like, gay people, black people, whoever it is. They pick them out and they find a pretext to hate them in the Bible, even if they have to make one up. Even if the Bible doesn't support their position in any way, they'll find that pretext anyways. Before we continue, I wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to subscribe to me on YouTube, sign up at my Patreon, check out my Teespring, and I have some other channels that I release videos on. I have my Telltale channel where I release long-form breakdowns of religious stuff. I have my Telltale Fireside chat channel where I get into politics. And I have my Telltale Unfiltered channel, where I do long-form stream breakdowns of televangelists, religious figures, political figures, that type of thing. So check that out if you're interested. Also, don't forget to sign up with my email list. I don't want there to be a situation where YouTube or Twitch or any other social media platform completely removes me and I don't have a connection to you guys. So if you want to follow my email list, you'll get uncensored, complete ad-free releases of some of my videos every single week. So check it out. A link is in the description to that, or you can just go to telltaleatheist.com/subscribe. Keep on going back. This one's 2014, mid-October. If you don't remember what was happening at this time, I think I was, I think I was in college at this time. There was a massive Ebola scare. Like, the Republican Party was convinced that everybody was about to catch Ebola because there was an epidemic happening in an African country at the time, and we were trying to help mitigate the effects and the damage and everything from the United States. And Republicans were using it as an attack on Obama. Like, oh my God, we're all going to catch Ebola. Like, suddenly they cared about wearing masks and taking care of people around them and protecting them and social distancing and quarantining and the whole 9 yards when Ebola wasn't even in the United States. I think there were a total of like 2 cases in the U.S. or something. And they were just losing their minds over it. Listen to what Hagee had to say about it. This is his son, by the by. This is Matthew Hagee, John Hagee's son on the left.
I want every American to hear this very clearly.
Please.
The prophet Joel says in the 3rd chapter, I, God, will bring all nations, and hear that phrase, all nations includes America, into judgment. For they have divided up my land, the land of Israel. God says when any nation divides up the land of Israel, they are subject to judgment.
So this is the pretext that he's going to use moving forward for explaining why anything bad ever happens. Because you don't love Jesus enough. America is facing judgment for not being righteous enough. We removed the 10 Commandments from schools, and now there's murder, there's theft, there are condoms in the restroom, there's CRT. Remember earlier? Now he's saying we aren't holy enough, we don't love Jesus enough, so God's going to bring judgment upon America in the form of Ebola.
And dividing Jerusalem is dividing the land. Our president is dead set on dividing Jerusalem.
That's completely made up. Like, Israel is a political train wreck and always has been and always will be. You know, there's nothing that can really fix that. There have been solutions proposed, solutions that Palestine wants, but solutions that Israel refuses to take, like 1967 borders, 1948 borders. There are a ton of solutions to this, 2-state solutions that everybody wants but Israel, and they're just not going to take it. So that's not the president's fault. That's Israel's fault.
God is watching, and he will bring America into judgment. There are grounds to say judgment has already begun because he, the president, has been fighting to divide Jerusalem for years now.
Obama wanted to make the Middle East a worse situation? Are you kidding me?
We are now experiencing the crisis of Ebola. We have a crisis in our economy.
No, to both of those things. No, the economy was actually getting a lot better at this time in 2014. It was recovering well after the 2008 financial crisis, the recession. And no, Ebola was not in the United States.
We are worried on every hand that we're going to be attacked by radical Islam. And there are some very rational voices saying we are their next target.
Which rational voices? Tell me which ones. So this is called using weasel words, when you appeal to some ambiguous, amorphous authority that doesn't even exist. Some group of people out there that feels this way. People are saying, or I've heard from authorities, or rational people think that, blah, blah, blah. They're weasel words. And when you hear somebody use weasel words like that, you should be suspect at the very least. Keep listening here.
Radical Islam. And there are some very rational voices saying we are their next target. We are a nation that has a crisis of leadership. We are in chaos and crisis. Anarchy is running our nation in Ferguson, Missouri.
Dude, what kind of a fantasy land does this guy live in, honestly? Literally nothing that he's said this entire time, this whole 20-minute segment so far has been true. Nothing. I don't think I've heard a single thing he said that was true. It's like he lives in a fever dream of his own creation where he's like the victim of everything. Like straight white men are the victims of everything, and God is bringing judgment down on America. It's just crazy, dude. Oh, my God. Let's go back a little further. Late July 2013. Listen to this one.
When you read books about witchcraft, throw Harry Potter in that. The occult, horoscopes, Ouija boards. You're opening the gates of your mind to the Prince of Darkness, and he will invade. And once he gets invited in, he doesn't go out until he's cast out.
I had the same experience with your mom.
I've had parents explain to me, well, I let my teenager listen to rock music because that's all he'll listen to.
Uh-oh, rock music.
Let me tell you, so the lyrics to real rock music is nothing more than satanic cyanide.
Satanic cyanides, wow.
Get it out of your house, throw it out, and burn it. It has no place in the house of the righteous.
That's who we're dealing with, guys. I'm telling you. God, I'm so deeply entertained by this. I love it to death. It is hilarious to listen to this guy say some of this stuff. Satanic cyanide. This is crazy. That isn't even the craziest one, okay? Not even close. Check this one out. In this one, he says, Katrina is God's judgment on America. I don't know if you guys remember Hurricane Katrina. It was this massive hurricane that just destroyed New Orleans. It was a mess. And George Bush was like, he was the president at the time, nowhere to be found. He was like at his ranch in Texas or something. Didn't help, didn't contribute, didn't do anything. When he most definitely should have been. It was like a state of emergency. People were like underwater. They drowned in their attics because they went all the way up to the roof of their house to get away from the water, and it flooded all the way. It was bad. It was bad. An entire city in ruins practically. Listen to what he had to say about that.
I believe that New Orleans had a level of sin that was offensive to God, and they were recipients of the judgment of God for that. The newspaper carried the story in our local area that was not carried nationally, that there was to be a homosexual parade there on the Monday that the Katrina came. And
is that even true? I don't know. And aside from that, there are 6 verses in the Bible total that even make mention of homosexuality. Out of the, I think, 34,000 verses in the Bible, there are only a total of 6 that mention it at all. 3 of them, or 4 maybe, can be thrown out completely because they're Old Testament from the Old Law. And as we know, Jesus came back, died for our sins, and fulfilled the old law. It's done away with. Doesn't matter what the old law said. We can safely ignore it. That's the same reason why you eat shellfish and pork and wear cotton and linen blends like polyester, because we've done away with the old law. Now, regarding the other 2 verses, it could be argued reasonably that those verses weren't talking about long-term gay relationships. They were talking about something completely different that was understood at the time as something other than what we understand today. So since there's a little disambiguation, a little confusion about what it means, I figure we can look to Jesus to see how we should feel about the gay community, right? If we just look to what Jesus said about the gay community, maybe we can get to the bottom of it. Except Jesus didn't say a word about the gay community. Okay? He didn't care. Presumably, he was God's son. He knew that his words were going to be dissected for the next 2,000 years. He knew that millions and millions, nay, billions maybe, would read his words over and over and over again and try to understand the point that he's trying to communicate. And he didn't think it was a good idea to put something in about gay people if he really did have a problem with them. Isn't that interesting? I simply reject the notion that Christianity should doctrinally have a problem with the LGBT community. I'm sorry. I reject it. The burden is on you to prove otherwise. I'll look to Jesus' words for my interpretations.
Katrina came, and the promise of that parade was that it was going to reach a level of sexuality never demonstrated before in any of the other gay pride parades. So
They're just completely fabricated. He's just looking for a reason to hate the LGBT community, of course.
I believe that the judgment of God is a very real thing. I know that there are people who demur from that, but I believe that the Bible teaches that when you violate the law of God...
Look, I don't care what you believe about the Bible. All right? There are solid facts to be had here. There's an objective empirical analysis to be had. Did Jesus speak negatively about the LGBT community? This whole religion is based on Jesus and his words, right? Did Jesus speak negatively about them? The answer is no. Jesus didn't give a shit. Okay? Thus, I don't give a shit. I wouldn't give a shit anyways. I'm just saying you shouldn't either. This isn't like a believe thing, okay? There is objective information to be had. He's just looking for a reason to hate the LGBT community.
That the Bible teaches that when you violate the law of God, that God brings punishment sometimes before the day of judgment. And I believe that the Hurricane Katrina was in fact the judgment of God against the city of New Orleans.
So anyway, that's John Hagee. Absolutely depraved, in my opinion. Terrible. Terrible person. And he's opening political rallies with a prayer for Nikki Haley. Now, what are Nikki Haley's chances of winning? Slim to none. But let's cover a couple facts. Usually, when somebody is chosen as a vice president, they come from the pool of political candidates that ran alongside or ran against the others in that field. So, commonly, with Republicans and Democrats, a vice president pick will come from your competitors in the primary. Not always, but commonly. She's probably aiming to become somebody's vice president. So that's fact number one to mull around. Fact number two, Donald Trump is actually in favor of her coming in because he knows that it splits the field. Ron DeSantis will have a harder time beating him in the primaries the more people are running in the race. So she's not a nobody. She has influence, particularly in this specific election in 2024. And we should take this seriously. We should not dismiss this. I don't know. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I think it's fascinating, and I'm interested to see what happens. And I absolutely think this dude is disgusting.